I think the World Bank reports were researched, and I'm happy that they are doing biannual reports on Nigeria now. Also emphasizes the current trajectory. We've had a very turbulent recession. We're out of that because the oil market ticked up, the pricing and the oil industry was a bit favorable. Now we also have agriculture in an upswing is helping our current accounts balances. But I think where we need to move forward to say where do we go from here. I guess the biggest indicator, like the U.S. economy, the biggest indicator is the unemployment figures. If the unemployment figures keep rising, then there will be always continuous question marks on the economic growth that we're talking about. The problem really is that we have a whole lot of people. Nigeria has human assets, if I call it like that, but practically underperforming or underemployed. And we need to just put productive work into their hands. And the way we're going to do that, like the World Bank report said, is we have to do much more work in our state. There needs to be much more regional competitiveness, and there needs to be much plumbing about how the physical health of the states in Nigeria how they are doing, and that we can't really get out of recession or really do the kind of growth that we want unless that we're beginning to start seeing our states as economic units, not just as another central collection distribution point. So I guess that report really did a whole lot of justice about what is needed to be done.
Well, Seun, do you think it's a situation where, I mean, just like the report said, that despite the exit from a recession, we still have unemployment on the high? Is it as a result of the fact that in 2016, we saw the labor force grow by 7% between the first and the third quarter of 2016? Is it as a result of not catering to that increase, or the fact that we're just out of recession on paper?
Because if you look at the numbers, if you distill the old GDP dynamics itself, where exactly are we growing? And I think that's the question of where we will need to interrogate deeply. Oil has played a very crucial role in taking us out of recession. And we must not forget, oil is like an enclave economy, employs a few people. It doesn't really change our employment dynamics like that. Agriculture has been good, but the scale that it needs to grow is not what we have currently seen. So unless we're able to look for the units where are employing and we're able to plug into that space and inject a whole lot of capital and stimulus and basically activate them back, I think that's where we should be looking forward to. If we keep papering over like less than 1% growth and we keep enjoying that, it's not exactly what we need. Because oil itself, in its enclave space with few people you could employ, can just deliver that for us. We need to really critically think, what are we doing in agriculture, what are we doing in mining, what's happening within the manufacturing sector, what's happening within the paper industry and also the chemicals industry. Those are the places that we need to put much more work in, because these places have skill to employ much more people.
All right, then. So let's put the statistics aside. It's a good thing we're talking about the facts now behind the story here. Do you think the government is, putting in place the right policies to drive this employment? Is money going to the right sectors that will drive the economy and in the long run, of course, create employment? Let's take a look at our budget to begin with. Are we really putting money in the sectors that matter? Today we are spending a lot on what? Insecurity as a result of unemployment as well, to some extent. Those who would actually argue that if the youths were engaged, we actually wouldn't have this problem. But that's another conversation entirely for another day. But do you think money is really going to the right sectors?
All right, so if you look at two sectors, two things involved, the insecurity itself. So the current crisis between the herdsmen and also the farmers in the northeastern region, they're spilling even to the northeast part. It's a big problem, and definitely that will keep expanding the unemployment bracket. And that's why government needs to take security serious. He also is also a pointer that could be a huge disincentive for private investors to come in. Like, how would you want to play in agricultural market in Benue if you know that tomorrow it could be swept over? So definitely there has to be much more interest in security within a point where we have counted as the bread of the food basket of the country. The second thing, again, if you look at it, it's also has to come within the states. What's the conversation that we're having within the states? If we're not having conversations around growth, government is spending so much on infrastructure. It's saying it wants to put more money on roads, on rail. Good. There's an economy behind the road, as the current Prime Minister Fashola says. But it's not scaling enough. It's not what you need to really take care of recession. We have a vibrant youth population, and how do you begin to invest much more in the SME system so that they can get much more capital to expand their business. I guess that's where government needs to put much more in their interest into. There's a fish, someone in aquaculture that needs funding, someone a farmer that needs funding, someone wants to try new ideas that need funding. There's been all talk about a developmental bank that's supposed to be much more geared for SMEs and small businesses, but that's not seeing the light of the day. So I think more of the focus of government is construction and making sure that we have the kind of infrastructure. It helps, it re-energizes deadwood engineering firms back to the play, but the question is, does it give you that scale that we want, considering the size of our population?
So let's go back to the conversation you say, the states should be having. What kind of conversations should they be having? I mean, we still check most states contribute little or nothing to the country's, GDP or even IGR to begin with, to start with. And how do they begin to address this? I mean, this is a standard that has actually run for a very long time. State governments way behind from the proceeds from oil to get their state running. And at the end of the day, of course, it's a deficit in most of their budgets. So how do we begin to address this conversation? Where do we begin?
Yeah, it's just basic economics. Everything responds to incentive. If the incentive within the current system that we run is that you come to the center and take your own share, and so it would continue. But if the incentive is that you need to generate IGR internally and you will be rewarded on the basis of that, you need to bring some level. So
the conversation around restructuring should come back.
Yeah, you need to bring up something to the table. When you bring something to the table, then we can commend you and support you. So, for example, someone that takes his IGR from 50 billion to 70 billion, there has to be some kind of incentive to that. Someone that you want to say, we are from Ebonyi and we'll focus on Abakaliki rice. How do we prop up that sector so that Ebonyi, in the next 10 years, provides 50% of the rights that Nigeria eats? That's kind of the way things happen. But number one, you need to really define the incentive and make sure that you encourage state governors to think big. And the second thing you now need to do is give them the stimulus to expand on all of these things and make sure that there's a whole long-term plan about it. The Nigerian electoral cycle of 4 years, which possibly if you adjust for politicking and the time for them to settle is around 2.5 years, does not give right thinking. And also the right kind of long-term thinking that you need to see more of these things happen. For example, if you're going to build a wine industry in this old Taraba, Mambila Plateau bed, you need like 7 years for it to fruit. If you're going to build a whole cocoa industry, you need like 3 to 4 years for it to properly come to the market. So are we willing to be able to do all of these things?